Good afternoon from the middle of Jerusalem. This is Diker, President of JCPA, and here we are in the middle of the Holy City at a JCPA Wartime Diplomacy update and briefing. Very special guests from much closer than you might imagine. I'm joined today by two special friends, Naka Bitya, who is actually a longtime Israeli resident, born in Egypt, raised a South Sudanese national as well, and to her right, a dear friend. I call him my rabbi, Simon Deng, who Simon is a South Sudanese champion of freedom and democracy, who is visiting from the United States in order to come and help 150 South Sudanese nationals who are here in Israel and deserving of permanent residency. And as happens a lot in Israel, it's getting caught up in bureaucracy that needs to be straightened out. But beyond the local dramas that take place in the Jewish and democratic state, we have two great analysts of a larger Middle Eastern problem, especially in the shadow of goodness gracious, it's been 5 months, more than 5 months of war opposite the Iranian octopus and its tentacles in Gaza, in the north in Hezbollah, and that is heating up. Simon Deng has been a great teacher for all of us, having had many discussions throughout the day and this week about a Middle East that is not always as friendly as it could be to itself, and clearly most of the Middle East not friendly to Israel. But here you have two of Israel's greatest spokespeople and allies. Simon, I'm going to start with you. You spoke today really about the Iranian octopus without even being prompted, and that type of moral clarity it seems to be missing, certainly in the American discussion. People in the United States, where you have been a longtime U.S. national, very outspoken on the issues of freedom and democracy for Sudan itself and the freedom and democracy that is South Sudan. Your view here is that we have to be careful to understand that it's the Iranian octopus and its tentacles that are strangling Israel and strangling the rest of the Middle East.
Thank you very much, thanks, and thank you for having us again. The issue of Iran is being missed as the biggest obstacles in the Middle East. When we talk about the terrorist Hamas, it is Iran. When we talk about Hezbollah, it is Iran. When you talk about Houthi in Yemen, is Iran. When you talk about Jamaat Islamiyah in Syria, in Iraq, is Iran. When you talk about ISIS, is Iran. So for anyone with the right mind, especially the superpower of the world, to go on sleeps and leave Iran out of what is happening in the Middle East like an angel from far away, that is a mess. Iran's, in my opinion, personal opinions, it is the problems of the Middle East. Iran's want to turn Middle East the way they wanted it, based on radical Islam's, based on their ideology, based on their belief when they talk about they want to create a nuclear weapon to wipe out state of Israel. So for any leader in the world that will become so blind and leaving Iran out of the debate we have today as a terrorism and a terrorist, that is beyond me myself. We have even in Africa, black nation, especially West Africa, there is a group which is emerging today in Mali. It is not in the media yet until they will do the big things that everybody will talk about it. And they are what? Iran. Boko Haram uh, in Nigeria is Iran. So how can we miss the whole elephants, which is behind what dragging and dying the world today, especially the Middle East. So to Iran, to me, is the biggest enemy to freedoms and democracy in the Middle East.
I mean, so I think what we're saying here is that Hamas is only the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Gaza is only a data point on a big graph that has the Iranian octopus all over it and its tentacles extending, across the Middle East. How did you feel, Naka, as an Israeli resident, on October the 7th when you witnessed from where you were in southern Israel all of the horrors that took place?
When it happened, I was in Eilat. I was at my friend's house, and the first thing I think most young people did was basically go on their social media and receive all the pictures and the videos of what was going on, and we were very confused. We were first very confused to know that this would happen here in Israel, and um, we were also very confused to to see the extremism of how it happened or what has been going on, and looking at the videos, looking at the pictures, it was very familiar to me, and I felt very sad for what was happening, because I see girls being dragged, I see older people being dragged, and and I know the violence that is happening.
Growing up as an African in Egypt.
Growing up as an African in Egypt, growing up with the violence and the racism in Egypt, it's something that you experience every single day. You know the extremism that it could be. You know you have to protect yourself at every single moment. Me being born in Egypt, that's basically what I was raised knowing. So it made me very sad. It made me very. It's like me and my friends, we just gathered. We were all South Sudanese. We gathered together at the house. We were just looking at the news, looking at our social media accounts, and we would just spend the entire day just feeling sad and talking about our experiences in Egypt as well. We talked about the things that used to happen to us in Egypt, how we used to come from school and have to run home, and how you walk home and suddenly somebody would throw a trash can at you with all the trash inside of it, and that was just our basic every single day life, and that's what we always.
But in Egypt, I mean, you have a dark skin or black Egyptians also, right? How did they know that you were an African growing up in Egypt as opposed to an Egyptian?
Well, the difference is a little bit bigger because we are darker skinned, so we would know that we're also Sudanese, and our Arabic is also, our dialect was also different, and they know most of the Sudanese that were in Egypt, they live also in the same neighborhood, in the same area, so they would know. We would go to the school, and they know that you're Sudanese. So if I get bullied in school, or if I get bullied outside of school, they know that I'm Sudanese, and they know that I'm darker skinned.
Call name Samara.
Yeah.
What's that?
Samara.
That's the easy part. The horrible part is when it becomes like violent.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
Simon, what is it? Tell us a little bit about South Sudan. Now, there are a lot of people in our audience that are unfamiliar with the difference between Sudan and South Sudan. South Sudan having becoming probably the newest country in the UN system of 192 UN nations. And you were obviously very involved in the whole emergence of South Sudan. Tell us about South Sudan and how close it is and why it's close to Israel.
We, the people of Southern Sudan, being us as a Christians, that in the first place keeping us close to Israel, because if you believe in Bibles, you believe in Israel and you believe in Jewish, unless you are not a believer. That's just basically it. But the most important element to that, Southern Sudan has been in war with the Northern Sudanese since 1955 until 2005. There was a temporary peace agreement from 72 to 2013. No, uh,
2000.
no. Anyway, 2017 to 82, when SPLA was created. That's give a temporary peace agreement between the North and the South. But with all those years during the First War, Southern Sudanese are being ridiculed by the Arabs, are the elements of Israelis, uh, supporters of Israelis, uh, Israel supporters. Even that Southern Sudanese no one know, because the majority of Southern Sudanese are illiterate. They never went to schools. If you didn't go to school, then how do you know the map where Israel is located? But based on that, based on us being Christians by the Arabs, we are just being indicted as a friend. And that itself uh, rhythms in the Southern Sudanese brains from the village. Those who went to school a little bit, they know Israel, where Israel located, but the people in the village, they know it's because they're being, told that, and that is stuck with us. Not only that, in 1967, General Joseph Lago, the leader of Anyanya in the First War, was the first to become interacted with the government of Israel. In 1967, the government of Israel delivered help to Anyanya to defend themselves. It was the first country in the world when at that time Southern Sudanese have no weapons, so nobody gave them a weapon. Nobody even considered them that they needed support. At that time, most of the nations which is neighbor to them are poor themselves. Kenya is poor, have his own problem. Uganda is poor, has his own problem. Even that, the Uganda was the one giving the Southern Sudanese a shelter as refugees at that time. But they don't have a capacity to give them tools to defend themselves. Israel was the first. And that itself become something of Southern Sudanese, that yet there is a friend in the world. And who is that friend? It is in Israel. Now, the case come against when the Southern Sudanese, who happened to be in Egypt where she was born, who ran away from the north, come to Israel, assuming that they would find shelter in Egypt. The government of Egypt decided and slaughtered Southern Sudanese in the park, Mustafa Mahmoud Park, which is closed by the United Nations. So they went just to camp. They didn't have an issue with the government. They went and camped in front of the UN because the UN didn't explain to them their status, whether they are refugees, because Egyptians tell them that you are not a refugee. But if I'm not a refugee and I'm not an Egyptian, what am I? So they were seeking just kind of clarity from Egypt, from the United Nations, from the UN, and that's why I call UN as a United Do Nothing Nation. They went with the security, the Egyptian security, to decide that these people have to be removed overnight, in the night, in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning.
It was a peaceful demonstration. People were just sitting
So
there,
they're
camping there.
Yeah.
No
And the
violence,
security
no
forces
nothing.
came
In the middle of the people, why were they sleeping?
At first, they made sure during the day they were basically blocking the whole area where everybody was sitting.
So it could not run.
Yeah, so then people were kind of alarmed that maybe something was going to happen, but then nobody even thought it was going to be that violent. And then the security just came that night.
And then there was slaughter. So after that event, they left with no choice, is to look who is the real friends in the area. And the real friends happened to be State of Israel. So they took a risk to walk across the border, dodging the Egyptian bullet, and they came here. They came here before anyone from Sudan, anyone from the Muslim community, anyone from other places which is now being considered by Israeli. These are their friends. And this is where I came to the Israel at that time to address this issue. And I was able to address it with the people in the Ministry of Interiors and other people with the help of Sharansky himself and so on.
Former Deputy Prime Minister,
Former Deputy Prime Minister.
Sharansky.
Yep. And he was the chairman of Jewish Agency at that time. The government of Sudan and the government of Israel, after Southern Sudan become independent, in which I promised people in Israel that if we become independent, the first place where the president of South Sudan will visit, it will be the United States first, and the second one is Israel, which he did exactly that, based on what we agree with the leadership in Southern Sudan. But when they came, they made mistakes. I wasn't there, and I wish I would have been with them at that time. They made mistakes by forcing Southern Sudanese at forced deportations, where about 3,000 was forced. Some of them was being put in prison here. You cannot put somebody in prison who never committed a crime. That itself, it was a mistake. That's I call it. There was forced back. Diker herself is one of the people among the people who was being forced back to Southern Sudan. Thank God, with some of the family of Israel brought her back, and now she's doing education. She's in university here.
Not only that, I mean, the deportation was very hard for us because we felt very rejected by Israel, by the government. And me, I was raised in Nalia. We were basically the only asylum seekers family there, the only black girl in my school. And I felt very Israeli. And when that decision came about, it was very shocking for us. But the one thing that actually helped to save the connection between me personally and Israel were the people that did not give up on us, were the Jewish Israeli that did not give up on us. The ones that decided that even though 1,500 kids were deported, they were
some of them perished, by the way.
It was 500 kids that were deported.
When you say deported back to
South Sudan.
Now, so South Sudan is a democracy.
No.
Not yet.
They took it independent, but it's not a democracy.
It was basically the year that we got referendum. And all of a sudden, 500 kids that were basically born here, or I was born in Egypt, so I have no idea what South Sudan looks like, now have to go back to South Sudan with their families. And those Israeli families did not give up on us. And someone with the name of Rami Gudovich and Lea Forstedt, they started basically an organization in which Israeli families took money from their own pocket and donated and helped support South Sudanese kids and took them to boarding schools in Uganda. And until now, the organization opened up with only 40 kids. We took a bus from South Sudan, from Juba to Uganda, trying to figure out which school to go to, where to go to, trying to figure out the rules of the schools. And now we're 400 people, 400 kids that are being sponsored.
Wow. And that's all by the same families up in the north?
Yes. That's all of Israel. The organization is called Become. And until now, it's still working.
Wow, that's extraordinary. I mean, it's really I think it's a very complex issue. I think also for Israel. I think because of the period that there were so many tens and even more, even 150, 170,000 folks from foreign countries in the Red Sea area who had come to Israel. Some seeking asylum, some seeking refuge, some seeking a better life, and then I think some of the internal considerations for Israel became a big political football between different for different parties in the coalition. But I would assume that you begin to really identify as an Israeli, especially you grew up here from the age of 9.
Yes.
So it's like home. It is home.
It is home.
Yeah.
It's become officially home.
So what is it about? Would you say out of the 11 million member or citizens of South Sudan, what percentage would say are pro-Israel, are really pro-Israel?
90%.
90%. So is there something that Israel's missing in terms of engaging South Sudanese brothers and sisters as allies, especially in this jihad that Israel is now experiencing?
It is not something missing. There is a lot of things missing. And I wish people in the government would have listened to me from the times when I used to come here. The only person whom I always talk to is the former Deputy Prime Minister, Sharansky, based on my connection with him as an activism, even in the US and so on. What I said then, before the Southern Sudan became independent, that these few Southern Sudanese in Israel, these are the bridge of the two countries. These are the bridge between Israel and Southern Sudan. And I was hoping we would have built from there the relationship. As I promised Sharansky that if we become independent, which he didn't believe, I said what I said before, that we will come to Israel first before we go anywhere. And we did. That's the beginning. And I told him that the Southern Sudan will not build the embassy in Jerusalem. Will rent, but the embassy in Tel Aviv, but the embassy will be built in Jerusalem. And that promise is still on the pipeline. In my lifetimes, we are going to build the embassy of Southern Sudan in Jerusalem. It may not be tomorrow, may not be next tomorrow, but soon as the time will allow it.
How many South Sudanese live in the United States?
About 1 million.
1 million in the United States?
Yes.
And so are they all as morally clear as you are about the regional situation, the Iranian octopus, Hamas, Hezbollah as being threats to...
Those who are politically oriented, yes. Unless, because we as humans, it is not all of us think the same way. But those who are political oriented, who came from Southern Sudan, who know the problems, what Southern Sudanese went through, yes. Unless somebody who was born yesterday.
Do you see, what do you see as the possibility for, as Charles Jacobs, the founder of the Jewish African, the Jewish African Alliance?
Yes, Jewish African Alliance, yes.
For real collaboration and cooperation between Israel, Jewish community, and South Sudan?
You know, Charles is right in a way, and I know Charles for 31 years. I and Charles, we built the coalitions, which is with the Mauritanians against slavery, and was with African Americans, and was very effectively to a point that we were able to slow down Louis Farrakhan in the United States. When the Louis Farrakhan was on the side of the government of Sudan, he was fighting us that we are agents of CIA, agents of Zionism, and so on. He was calling us, we the people of Southern Sudan, these are the so black.
It's amazing. You could say that Louis Farrakhan is an agent of the neo-Nazis, or an agent of the former Soviet Union, or the agents of the Iranian regime.
Yeah. So what we did together with those of Charles Jacob and those of the Christian Solidarity Internationals, and with the bishops of Sudan, led Bishop Makrams, we will take some figures of the African Americans. If you don't believe us, come and see with your eyes. If you don't believe us, according to Louis Farrakhan, he's telling you that he went to Khartoum. He didn't see the slave in Khartoum. The slaves are not being taken in Khartoums. It be taken on the borders where the war is and so on. So you come and see. So those who came with us, they went back with the evidence in their hands, and they have to confront Louis Farrakhan that they are going to go to the media to tell what they saw. So the media and people in the Congress, the Black Caucus, have to make a deal with the Louis Farrakhan so that he will keep silent, not to interfere with what being said, so that this group should not say anything. The compromise being made and our case was not now, is being valid, and so on. So the Jewish Alliance and Africans need it, because in my opinions, which I'm part of it, Jewish should not be the one defending themselves politically. Yes, they can defend themselves physically, but politically with ideas, it should not be the one. Because if you happen to be the one saying that, oh, Israel didn't do this, they didn't do this, you are part of Israelis. Who are going to believe you? But the way I did by defending Israel's in Canada, defending Israel in Australia, defending Israel in South Africa, even defeating the Nobel Peace Prize late Bishop Tutu. This is what we need, and this is what the purpose of that organization.
So here today, Israel is being accused of being, what I call apartheid anti-Semitism is a new phenomenon, which is really flooding America. Farrakhan's been talking about this now for 40 years, since the whole black militant Islamic liberation movements of the 1960s. But this has really caught on. Yasser Arafat was very skilled at grabbing on in the 70s. Edward Said of Columbia University.
Yep, I know him very well.
Yeah, so he, passed away some years ago.
We were debating.
You were debating. What does Israel need to do? What is it? This seems to be a big threat now, certainly since the woke movement, the confusion over Black Lives Matter, which has become sort of a radical political movement, not a movement of racial justice, which the Jews were the first minority to support. By the way,
he's a radicals. He's a radical, not a like a radical, but radicals.
How do you see, as an American, a Sudanese American, how do you see the whole Black Lives Matter movement working against the Jews? Why has it turned into, really, in a large sense, an anti-Semitic movement, especially now in post-October 7th, where Israel is being, Israel, which is a brown-black majority country, by the way, in its roots, right, in its origins, is being recast as this white supremacist country.
And I exactly what you're saying, it is true, and I consider that that groups is groups of a bunch of ignorance, even being champions by people with PhD, those of Dr. West.
Cornel West.
Cornel West.
Yeah, former Harvard professor. When I was at Harvard as well in the 1980s.
I disagree with them. Yes, Israel is being indicted simply because of the color, in which these few ignorance groups, they forgot, maybe because they don't know history, in which that during the civil rights movement, who were there with that color? It was the Jewish, who was being victimized and killed together with them at that time. It was the Jewish. But sometimes we, as a human being, we forgot very quickly, especially if you have a limit of understanding of what you are doing. That's a Black Lives Matter.
So I think also social media has a big effect on it, because the moment something spreads out, it's like it doesn't come back again. It's like social media starts by people giving their opinions, and then looking at I guess Palestinians as the weaker,
the oppressed.
Yeah, the oppressed, the point of view. So I guess maybe the Black Lives Matter familiarize themselves with it. So then they see that because Israel is this big giant, the Goliath, so now Palestinians need to be protected.
Is it really a question of framing and images? Because in fact, Israel is smaller than New Jersey. Israel is the size of Maryland, surrounded by 350 million Arabs, 85% Sunni Arabs in 57 Muslim states and 22 Arab states. So Israel is teeny in a world of the Iranian octopus,
surrounded by enemies.
But it's not in the West. It's not framed that way, and that's why after October 7th in the Hamas war, Israel looks like Texas, right, in the American mind.
Well, I think so. people forgot very quick the times when Israel was a population of 2 or 3 millions, and over 200 and something millions together was shoutings and kill the Jews and throw them in the Mediterranean Sea. Kill the Jews. People forgot, and nobody even come and at that time said that no, you cannot do that. If Israel didn't rely on himself or herself, that never against, because it happened to you before and nobody were there. Now you have to rely on yourself, and you did what you did during the 6 days war. We would not have Israel today if they didn't act, defend, relying on themselves. And nobody can come and say that the 200 millions coming to takes only 3 millions.
Yeah.
At that time, you are the victims. Now they come to finish you. And this is where I said before what I said about Iran. When Iran pledged of his Nicola, he's what to do what? He's to wipe out. And they said it the way Hamas said in their charter. So peoples in the world should look at the history on the other side. The history of Hamas, what they believe in, the history of Iran, what they believe in, and Israel have to be aware. Israel should not fall asleep the way they did in October 7th. That's my opinion, and that's my advice to every single citizen of Israel.
What's both of your advice for, let's say, for the American Jewish community, which is now under unprecedented attack? We've seen it's not only about Israel in North America. It's gas the Jews, kill the Jews. It's really expressions of the traditional Jew hatred that we haven't seen really like this since the Nazi period. I mean, since the Nazi period and after the Nazi period, I haven't seen that.
Well, and this is where some of us have to come in to say to the Jews and the Israel, you are not alone.
And to talk about our point of view of what we have experienced.
Yeah.
Because it's not only what we have seen. First of all, I'm here in Israel, so I know what's happening here in Israel, but I also have the experiences of what my parents have gone through, what my mother have gone through, and being persecuted because of her religion, that she had to fly from her country. So we have our own experiences and our own stories to tell, to justify or to prove what Israel is actually going through is real.
So, I mean, when you say Hamas is Boko Haram, you're saying I suffered from radical Islam the way the Jews have suffered and the Israelis have suffered radical Islam. So this is it's a partnership of experience and a partnership of suffering the same assaults.
That's what I said in my articles, that they came to my people, now they come for you.
Well, it's a good object lesson for us, and thank you for joining us on JCPA Wartime. This is Wartime Diplomacy Update, but it's an international relations update. Yes. About how we should be awake at the wheel, not fall asleep, all of us, in a region and a world that is constantly challenging all of us. So thank you very much, Simon Deng. It's really a pleasure having you, Naka, and Vidya also having you here. Thank you very much. Hope to have you many times again.
And thank you for having us as a guest here today in the center.
It's an honor to have you at the JCPA, and we look forward to having you as partners and allies in this common struggle for freedom.